Angela. Next up is Beth Wisniewski. Beth?
Hi everybody, I want to say thank you for everybody coming out tonight. I'm going to try to get through this without any tears, but before I tell my story about my brother, I just want to speak about my family life. And we were born and raised in Point Pleasant. My father was the captain of Wall Township Police. My mother is a nurse. My parents were around all the time. We had those family dinners every night. We were active in sports, activities. Both of us did well in school, a lot of friends, tons of family members always around. So to touch base that this doesn't just affect a certain type of person is really important. In February of 2013, I received a phone call from my older brother, and literally a phone call that made me fall down onto my knees and just break down hysterically crying. He had told me that he was addicted to heroin. And in 2013, I was like, heroin? Like, I kept going through my head. I hadn't heard that around, I wasn't really aware of anybody doing that. And as we went through his journey, I started to learn more and more and more about heroin and why it starts and what led him to his last decision. Right after that phone call, Victor was willing and wanting to change. He wanted his family and he wanted his life, and he decided to go into a rehab. And he was in Stepping Stones in Florida, completed his program, was doing very well, and he was under the impression that he wanted to be a counselor one day. And then he went to sober living from there in Daytona to Solutions by the Sea. And again, he was doing phenomenal. We had many phone conferences, very positive. And unfortunately, Victor, 1 week after leaving Stepping Stones, went back out to Austin, Texas, and decided, for whatever reason, that he was going to use again. And that was the last time Victor was ever going to have a choice, and he passed on that day. I think the most important thing to get out to everybody is how scary this is, and you guys should be scared. I think parents need to be scared. And I think that you need to really be more involved in your children's lives. The coming, going, the phones, it's so scary how fast-paced everything is, and how manipulative people are that can take drugs. And I think it's also really important to understand that it is a disease. And it's not just a disease that affects the addict, it's a disease that affects the family. How many Christmases have we had without my brother? Birthdays, random phone calls where I just want to pick that up and say, hey Vic, how are you? Or what would you do in this situation? And, that's all gone. Once they're gone, they're gone. So I really want to stress to be involved. Question prescriptions, question what you're being given from your doctors. Because why do we need these drugs? They're not really helping the pain, they're just stopping the pain receptor in your brain. So why take something that may not even really help you if you don't really need it? Just try to be around your kids and question them and let them know that it's okay. Even if they do make a mistake, that you're not going to judge them and yell at them. They need that open communication. And that's all I really have to say. Thanks for coming.
Well, Mrs. Smith, I don't want Beth to be the only one who remains seated, so plus I've taken my shoes off, so I don't want to have that to the podium. But yes, the hardest part is to always follow the people that are telling the real life stories and their own personal experiences. So Angela and Beth, thank you so much for being here tonight and sharing with all of us your stories, because that's what is most impactful, is to hear the real life stories. Mrs. Smith asked me just to talk a little bit about what we do here at Point Pleasant School District to address these issues. And obviously, being an educational institution, the first thing that we do is we provide education. We provide education about alcohol and drugs and decision makings and self-image and coping skills, and all of those things. When I first started here, there was a Point Borough graduate who was vice principal in charge of curriculum at the time, Ed Liebfried. He later went on to retire as assistant superintendent. And what Ed told me, he said, Jim, when it comes to this alcohol and drug education, please remember that if ignorance were the problem, education would be the solution. When it comes to drugs and alcohol, ignorance is not the problem. We know drugs are bad, we know drugs are harmful, we know addiction runs in the family, we know all of that, yet we still do it. So again, ignorance is not the problem. And because of that, and because the Board of Education, and because Mrs. Smith knows that education in and of itself is not enough, the other component that we do here in the school district is prevention. And we have a whole bunch of prevention programs in the district, from the different programs like Ms. Maraglia runs the Student Ambassadors, and Dave Johnson here at the high school runs the PBSIS, or the Be On Point program, and Mr. Kirk and his crew over at the middle school also do the Be On Point, the PBSIS. Trying to develop programs to work on all of those things as far as good character and decision making and doing the right thing and being upstanders instead of bystanders when it comes to bullying and those types of things. Project Graduation is another substance abuse prevention program, but we don't call it that. We call it Project Graduation, a big celebration for the graduating seniors. And the interesting thing, for the past 27 years, on graduation night, we have not had any alcohol or drug-related fatalities. We haven't had any fatalities on graduation night. So that's definitely a successful program for that limited scope. I can tell you that wasn't the case my freshman year in high school, when we had, I remember going to homeroom on Monday morning, and it was the first time I ever saw a teacher cry. And we're sitting in homeroom, and the teachers are sitting there crying, and of course all the students start talking. And we found out that 5 students had died on a drunk driving car accident on the Seabright Bridge after the senior prom that Friday night. That was my first introduction to people dying. So we have these prevention programs, and another one that we're doing, and again, Kim talked about, evidence-based programs. We do the Heroes and Cool Kids mentoring program here at the high school. We have a group of awesome students here at the high school. They go and they get trained, and then they go over to the middle school, and they talk to the 6th graders about bullying and self-image and substance abuse. So with the education and with the prevention, Mrs. Smith and the Board of Education still know that that's not enough to stop the insanity and stop the epidemic. So we also have the intervention services here at the high school where if we see students who are showing signs and symptoms of substance abuse, either here in the school or their parents call, or believe it or not, we've had students themselves come down and say, I have a problem, please help me. So we do that. We'll do interventions with them, and we'll get them in treatment if they need treatment. Currently we have a student right now in treatment addressing a heroin-related issue. So it's here in Point Pleasant, and I am completely thrilled that everyone is here tonight, especially the parents that brought your kids, because that's what you need to do, and that's what everyone here has talked to the same thing. When you hear the same thing from multiple people, maybe they know what they're talking about. You need to know what your kids are doing. Kids, you need to know what your parents are doing. Then you need to talk about that. Because we, as much as we have a heroin epidemic, we also have an alcohol epidemic. And we have lots of kids and lots of parents here in Point Pleasant that have alcohol issues. And if the parents think that their kids don't know, you're mistaken and you're fooling yourself. So let's talk about that. Some of the other things that we're doing, you'll notice, thanks to Jackie Goss, talk about an amazing person. Thank you, Jackie. I just ask her a question and 3 seconds later it's up on the school website. I don't know how she does that. I still have a flip phone, but one of the things that we're going to put up on our website, and it's already on the prosecutor's website, is a video called Chasing the Dragon. It's a frank discussion about heroin addiction. Some Ocean County members are in the video. Please watch it. We are going to be showing it at the high school and the middle school. So let me repeat that. Please watch it, because we're going to show it to your kids at the high school and the middle school. And it's something that needs to be talked about, and they need to know the natural progression, as been talked about earlier, from the pain medication after a sports injury or a tooth pulled or whatever it was. I have had, a couple surgeries in my lifetime, and it's amazing the natural painkiller called ice and what ice can do, and that's my drug of choice is ice. The other thing is, I'm really proud of everything that, our students do here at Point Borough. When the prosecutor's office, was starting this a few years ago, they turned to Point Borough and they made a really cool video called Right Turns, and that's again on the prosecutor's website. And it talks about just what we've been talking about. You will have choices, and you have a choice. My son, who's now a freshman in college, and all the staff members over there are saying they can't believe it's taken me this long to bring up my son. But when he was in 4th grade, every day after school he'd go up the street and there's a dozen kids up there playing basketball, and usually about 5:30, 5:45, I text him at dinner, come home, and then 15 minutes later I have to walk up the street and get him, and I'm annoyed. And there's one particular day, 15 minutes later, he's home. And I looked at him, I was like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm up there. I just didn't want to play basketball today. And I said, come on, buddy, I have to drag you from that basketball court. What's up? And he's like, well, we played basketball for a few minutes, and then, one of the kids said, oh, I got a case of beer in the woods, and they're all in the woods right now drinking. So he made his phone. He does not have a flip phone. He has a real phone. He faked, made his phone ring, and had a fake conversation with his mom, my wife, and said, well, oh, come on, Mom, now? Okay, all right, I'll be right home. And he came home and he got himself out. And I was blown away because I didn't teach him that, I should have, but I was like, no, he's in 4th grade. I don't have to talk about that until 7th or 8th grade. So I don't know if he had picked it up at school or, where he learned that, but he learned at a very early age how to get out of trouble. You, as the parents of your children, need to give your kids those tools. We give them the tools here at school, but when they hear it from every avenue, when they hear it from their coaches, when they hear it from their parents, when they hear it from their teachers, when they hear it from everybody involved in their lives, maybe they get the point that it's real, and maybe we should pay attention to this. So that's pretty much all I want to say. I'm just, really impressed with our previous speakers. And I know Mrs. Smith is going to take some questions now, if anybody has questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Foley. And we want to open it up now to the audience. If you have any questions regarding for any of our panelists tonight, please step up to the mics. We have them in both aisles, and we'd be glad to take your questions. Just come up, and you don't have to worry about stating your name or anything like that. Just ask your questions to who you want it directed, and we're glad to answer them. So we're opening up the floor to anybody who wants to come up.
I actually have a question for Angela.
Yeah.
The concept, I think, for a lot of people is that heroin is really, it's the highest echelon of drugs you get. It's really scary. How does a young person like you, again, you don't fit the stigma of or the stereotype of what pictures of heroin, like children that doesn't really exist. But how does that become okay? Like, how do you get to the point where you start with something, obviously, because you don't start with heroin, or do you? I mean,
Well, I think it's important to address that the stigma of addiction and what we think the typical substance abuse user looks like is not the case anymore. It is your son and daughter. It looks like the girl next door, or the boy next door. That's what our heroin addict looks like today. So I think for myself, I know in high school, you know, you start smoking weed, you start drinking. Typical, that's normal. I think everybody in this room has had experience with that. And then prescription medications, you know, and prescription medications and just the chemical imbalance, because this is a disease. Because not everybody who tries drugs continues to do drugs. It's just not knowing if you're that person that can stop. And I know for me, I wasn't that person that can stop. And then once it was in my body, I didn't know how to stop. And I was so uneducated at an early age. I mean, I was 16 years old going on a family vacation, and I can remember going on the family vacation, and the first day, second day, waking up and feeling sick, like I had the flu, and not knowing what was wrong with me. And saying, oh my God, am I sick? Do I have a cold? Not knowing, wholeheartedly not knowing that I was addicted to opiates. You know, but knowing that the first second that I got off the plane to come home, that was the first stop that I made. You know, so I think that educating our youth is so important so that they can see, like, this could happen to you. And it is. It's happening to you and your friends. And being aware of it and telling on, you know, I think the girls that I grew up with, you know, I am the only substance abuse user out of our group that continued, and I think what they would say is they wish they would have just told on me sooner, you know, that there was a problem and that I couldn't stop, because it wasn't just a weekend thing for me anymore. It was an everyday habit that started.
Hi, good evening. My name is Paul Williams, and first I wanted to say thank you to all of you for this presentation. I think, I'm not speaking for everybody, but I think that it was very impressive for those who were in attendance. I particularly thank you, Angela, again, for sharing your story. I've seen you speak a couple times behind the press, and I appreciate your sharing. But just in the interest of candor, I happen to be friends with Angela on Facebook for quite a while, and so she can attest to the fact that I have a tendency to be very, very frustrated and a very harsh critic of the help that supposedly is being made available in Ocean County. But I wanted to ask, in particular the health department, because frankly, this is the first time I have seen the health department out in the public talking about this. Typically, we hear it from the county prosecutor's office, and that drives me up the wall, because it's not necessarily so much. The health part isn't a law enforcement issue. I think it's a health department issue, and I've been complaining about this, and I've been putting the prosecutor's office on the spot about it. Why are you guys so far in the forefront of this? Why isn't the health department? Why aren't the mental health professionals involved in this? This is a health issue. But you brought up one thing that I thought was really interesting to me. And you mentioned, and when I'm speaking to the young lady from the health department, you brought up the fact that you have funding for beds. And that is one of the things that's been a tremendous point of my frustration, is the availability or unavailability of beds for the uninsured. And without necessarily throwing anybody under the bus right now, I'm concerned with the way that the availability of treatment is being funneled toward a particular person and the agency that person works with. So I'd like to hear from the health department about this funding that you said is available, and what is the real world, the practical process for the uninsured to get into treatment through your office?
Of course. So, like I mentioned earlier, is the health department receives funding from both the Division of Mental Health and Addiction Services and also from Ocean County as a match component to this. to offer funding as per legislation from Chapter 51, 1989. This was put out for indigent residents, so there has to be an eligibility criteria. There are other state fee-for-service and grant initiatives out there, and that's the navigation piece that I brought up earlier is we don't expect the community to be an expertise on all of the ins and outs of different funding sources, and that's where we do come in and we'll ask some questions to see the best way to get you into treatment, if there's any way to expedite it, because there are priority populations that can get in quicker. For our funding, we are more of the funding source. It comes to us and then we go out through a contractual process that I'm sure we don't want to talk about today because it is a little lengthy. It's purchasing law that we go out annually and we get contracts based on a comprehensive plan that we feel would be the best for our residents. Like I said, we have a robust continuum of care. We want our indigent residents to be able to go through detox to residential, to halfway house, to outpatient services, to recovery supports. We try to offer a full year of covered services for an individual that cannot afford it on their own. So they would call our office just for navigation and we would refer them to our contracted agencies. Unfortunately, at that point, we really are just the grant funding source. We do not control the beds that are available at these facilities. And I agree with you, it is extremely frustrating that there is such a need, not just in Ocean County, but in the state as a whole, and we want to get our family members in. When somebody comes to you and says, I have an issue, I have a problem, and they are opening their heart to you, the first thing you want to do is give them a hug and then get them into the treatment they need. Unfortunately, every county is experiencing an issue. And when we take that amount of people trying to access beds, there isn't enough. Everybody is trying to get in, and unfortunately there are wait lists. So we try the best, we get the individual on the wait list, we try to find them other service in the interim, but do we refer them to AA, NA, what can we do to get them to where they need to go when a bed opens up? It's not a perfect system. I go to the state on a monthly basis, we talk about the capacity issue, we talk about the funding issue. This is known. If you saw the State of the State address, you know Governor Christie is looking to put more resources into the community. We're trying to figure this out. As for the Ocean County Health Department, we have been around the table. On the alcohol and drug coordinator, we have prevention staff, we have a public information officer, we have a bunch of services, so sometimes different people go out, so I apologize if we've never engaged together. But if you ever have any questions, like I said in my presentation, we are here. And part of the reason we're here today is to get our information out. Don't hesitate to call us if you have questions.
I am Keith, and I'm actually an elementary teacher in this district. I'm looking through the lens of like an elementary teacher and hoping, assuming that my students are not addicts or experimenting or whatever, but we listen, we hear what our children are saying, and you hear things, but it's hard to tell, like, and I guess I'd ask anyone on the panel here, but are there telltale signs that our children's families, our caregivers are addicts? Is there something we're specifically listening to that would put a warning in our heads? I mean, something other than the typical, like something that really screams out heroin or opiates.
Are you asking from like an addict or
I'm asking it as, like, what should an elementary teacher be listening for to pinpoint a caregiver being an addict?
for elementary, I don't know if I have a direct answer, but I know from my experience with my brother, when I look back in past and before he was treated for back pain, which started his whole route, I'd say he had a very low self-esteem. He never quite felt like he fit in. So I think maybe individuals, I don't know if you agree, that don't really feel like they fit in well, that could be like a flag, red flag.
And are there things that we should be listening to the children saying about their parent or guardian that would tell us, wow, maybe there is some addiction in that house that the child witnessing?
I think that a child of a substance abuse user would display signs of neglect. Not that the parent necessarily wants to neglect their child,
Right.
but under the influences, that tends to be what happens. So just if you were looking for neglect, as in any case, abuse or any of those kinds of things, it would be somewhere the same.
And to follow up on that, I guess this might be more for the county people. I know Child Protective Services are very busy and are very overwhelmed, but do they have any role in detecting caregivers that are heroin addicts with children in the house?
Yes, absolutely. If there's any indication that there's abuse in a child, we're required to call DCP&P, Division of Child Protection and Permanency. We work with them as well. Some of the signs, as what you're alluding to, if the child's, difference in appearance, maybe not having lunch with them, appears mussed or not being taken care of, late, maybe the child saying, mom or dad, they're always sleeping.
Right. Do we know, is there a certain intervention that Child Protective Services is taking to serve that child or get into that house because of a heroin addiction, or is it kind of along with everything else on the list?
Well, it'd be hard initially to determine exactly what the problem is, but if there is a concern, a referral will be made. A lot of times it does come from the schools. If they pick up, because teachers become very familiar with their students, and they also detect differences in their students. So if there's a concern about their well-being, if they feel they're being neglected or abused, they will make a referral, and then DCP&P will follow up and do a home visit. And if there's any indicators there, then they have procedures they follow. Obviously, they have the best interest of the family as well.
And just a question, forget about being a teacher for a moment. We're talking a lot about, and you hear about these doctors that are prescribing all these things, and maybe I don't read enough newspapers, but I think I read too much. We never see anything about doctors being held responsible. I mean, are they Teflon to this? Are we not even at that stage yet? I'm just curious.
I want to answer the first question. I had something to say after the lieutenant spoke. One of the things that's important to me, and I think you heard it today, is we have to get rid of the stigma first. Because a lot of the reasons our kids might not just come out and say it is because the stigma is still there. And, this can happen to anybody. That's the message. That's the message. There doesn't have to be, it doesn't mean you're a bad person because you got caught up in drug addiction. That's exactly the opposite of what we're trying to say. And I think the more we say that to our kids and to each other, the more that we're going to share with each other that I have addiction in my family, and so do I. And quite honestly, and I'm not going to do this, but if you took a random survey, it's all of us, by the way. Every single person in this room has come in contact with addiction in one way or the other. It may not be your mother or father, maybe it's a cousin, maybe it's somebody else. You know somebody who is addicted, it might be your neighbor. And we sit around and for years we've judged and we don't talk about it, and Angela talked about it. And that's step one, is to get past that so our kids are talking about it. And I know we're not there yet, it doesn't directly answer the question, but I think we need to encourage our kids to talk about this stuff. There's nothing wrong with them because they may feel the urge to continue to use substances. It's quite the opposite. Now we know about it. It's like any other thing that we talk about. If our child is feeling ill for any other reason, we'd expect them to come to us, and yet this is hidden, and it's kept hidden, and then it gets worse, and then it's hidden more, and then it gets worse, and it's hidden more, until we get numbers and we get statistics. And that's exactly what we're trying to avoid, is really to send the message that if this is affecting your family, let's talk about it. Let's get together. Let's attack it. Let's do anything we would do with any other problem in our community, by the way. If we have garbage piling up outside of the school, we're going to call somebody, right? We're going to call the town to come and get the garbage. If we have a sewer, we're going to, whatever problems we have in our community, don't we address those? Why is this one different? And I think that's the step with our kids, to make sure that they know that there's nothing wrong with that. That it's an affliction like anything else, it's a disease like anything else, let's deal with it, let's get it. And let's deal with it before you become that number that none of us want to talk about. In terms of the other answer, we did prosecute one doctor at the county level. I certainly don't want to speak to any specific cases, but our policy is to look for those people, regardless of who they are, that distribute drugs and make these available to the people in our community, whether they be doctors, whether they be civilians, whether they be law enforcement, whoever it is, school personnel. We're going to find them and we're going to take care of that, because the fact that these substances are available only help the problem, because they're too easy to find, they're readily available. The question about heroin before, you know, it's available. And it's available whether you live in Point Pleasant, whether you live in Barnegat, whether you live in Toms River. And I think as a society, maybe we're still at that stage that you can't find heroin. You have to be on a dark alley to find heroin. And by the way, those little prescription pills, it's heroin. And you can find heroin. And it's more mainstream than maybe the audience knows, or maybe we put out there. But these are not people going to dark alleys to buy this stuff. These exchanges happen in our school. We talk about that. These exchanges are happening, as you said, in our doctor's offices. So I know county policies, from speaking with the prosecutor many times about this. If we know that there are doctors distributing and abusing their privilege to prescribe drugs, we'll certainly look into that and investigate that.
Thank you, everybody.
And Keith, I could just follow up on the first part of your question as far as identifying a student in your classroom or whatever. What you want to do, and what we do here at the high school and over at the middle school, is train the teachers just to report what you see, and don't put any judgments along with that, because the same signs and symptoms that could be of, you know, a child living in a household with substance abuse in it, it could also be the family was displaced by Hurricane Sandy, or the parents are going through a divorce, or a parent got laid off, or whatever it is. You know, there's the classic 4 types of reactions with children. There's a great movie called Soft is the Heart of the Child, and they outline how children of alcoholics and how children of addicts respond psychologically to a parent's addiction. One could be the hero child, the student who gets straight A's, becomes the class president in National Honor Society and the team captain of all the sports teams. The other one is the family scapegoat, the child who acts out, who gets, you know, caught by the police doing things, or, you know, in 5th grade is smoking cigarettes on the baseball field or whatever. The lost child, the student in your classroom who's just sort of, you know, not there, and, you know, you ask them a question and it looks like they're constantly daydreaming. But all of those same reactions that could be alcohol or drug related family issues, there could be a whole host of other issues. So, you know, we have counselors in all the schools. If you see something, if you have a child that you're concerned about, or a particular behavior that you're concerned about, just report what you're concerned about and don't come to a conclusion. Thank you.
And let me, Keith, let me just add on that real quickly. I want to keep going.
You can sit down, Keith.
Yeah, you can sit down. But I think what you're talking about too is your instincts are going to take over as a teacher. Your teacher training, when even though you're dealing with 3rd graders, I think somebody said it earlier, you're going to see if they're, I want to say, out of sorts one day. You're going to know them from being with them all day, all year long, and you're going to maybe detect something. That's your training. That's your years of doing that. And I know we have a lot of teachers in the audience tonight. I think you just pick up on that. It's just like if you think maybe there's abuse going, you're going to pick up on that. You pick up, I would guarantee, they would talk. Kids talk. 3rd graders talk. 4th graders talk. If they're having issues at home or with their parents, maybe I think you just have to let yourself. I think you'll know it, and I think you'll do the right thing, and you will talk to your administrators like we have the routine. And I think, like Mr. Foley said, you don't make judgments. Just report what you hear, and then it's our job as administrators to work that out. And if we need to work with the police department on those, that's what we do. So I think you'll be fine with that.
Just to jump on what Mr. Smith said, because we see it all the time when kids come into court and we see them. As parents, you know your kids better than anyone. So you're going to see that as well. Pick up on that. Pay attention to that. I said it earlier, and I just want to highlight it again, though. You know when something is different with your child. And it's really important to address it immediately. It's really important to deal with it. It's really important to not think of it as a phase, because it may just not be. And by the time we get around to figuring it out, they may be too far down that road, or far enough down that road where the interventions are too late at that time, and now you're deeper into that system and into those interventions. So as a parent, pay attention. I can't say that enough. And lastly on that point, You know, it's really neat when your kids like you. Like I said, I have 4 of them. I hope that they like me. But my first job is to be their parent. And there are going to be plenty of days where they don't like me. And I think we need to be okay with that as well. I have one of my children is a girl, a 15-year-old daughter. And by way of confession, I harass her all the time. And I have 3 boys and I harass them all the time. And it's okay if they're angry with me that I took their phone and I looked at it. That is okay. We're all going to get over that. They're going to get over it. And quite honestly, if that helps them to know, I can't bring that stuff into my house because my mom's going to find it, my dad's going to find it. Good. Good. But talk to them about it as well, because you don't want them to hide it from you either. You want them to know that you'll talk about it, that you'll answer questions without judgment, that you'll understand that they're kids, that we were all kids. I think sometimes as parents we do forget that we were kids. Like I said, I readily admit the tons of silly things that I did growing up. And yet here I sit as an assistant prosecutor. So I think we need to talk to our kids about that as well, that they're not perfect, but this is a pretty big thing to talk about. So I encourage you to do that as well.
Can you speak a little bit to the addicts that might need help, who they can go to without fear of a reprisal or getting in any kind of trouble? If someone is concerned, students, children, who they can call if they have a concern? I know we talk about the trusted adults here, but who do you recommend somebody who's having a problem? Where do they go?
Sure. Like I mentioned before, the Ocean County Health Department, the Alcohol and Drug Unit is a great starting point. Like I said, we are funding based, but if we cannot accommodate something to the funding we have, we will help with navigating through the very confusing field of the substance abuse resources, not only locally in the community, but in New Jersey. Insurance is extremely difficult to navigate. We try our best to help individuals know what they are eligible for, if they qualify for any other grants. But on top of that, if it's a family member that has a concern or a question and just doesn't know where to go, myself, I'm a licensed counselor. I also have a certified alcohol and drug counselor on staff. We'll provide that information. I mean, I had a call over Thanksgiving from a woman in a senior community asking me if it was okay to serve wine because her brother was in recovery. She honestly wanted to know what the best practice as a hostess was, and we dialogued about it. I mean, there is no silly question out there. If you have something you want to talk about, you don't understand what's going on, you think that maybe something's a little off with your child, and you want to just touch base with somebody who talks to people every day, let us be that place you go to. And if we can't do it, we will definitely let you know where to go. There are a bunch of new initiatives coming out. I believe it's Brick Police and Manchester Police have counselors available on certain days of the week for individuals seeking treatment can go in there. The prosecutor's office too, if you think it's more of a legal issue, your local police. What I've seen most about Ocean County, and it's really wonderful, is everybody's coming together. You have the community. You have people who are having these grassroots efforts that want to bring attention to this and are passionate. You have the police, law enforcement, prosecutor. Everybody is really working to get that number down to 0. So if you don't know where to go, make one phone call. And we really try to do a warm handoff, no wrong door approach to get you where you need to go to get the answers that you need.
You have to be 18 though to get, can children minors.
Well, I mean, if you're under 18, you can call, there are services available. 13, 17, there's treatment available, and you can call and ask questions. Not always is parental consent needed in certain things, so we'll definitely navigate that in terms of what the questions are. And I mean, there's also the right to refuse treatment, which can make things even more complicated. So, but regardless, if there's a teenager out there that has a question, they need to know that they can go to their SAC. They can go to somebody in their school and ask those questions. The SACs, I mean, I know a lot of the SACs, and I have to say once again, Ocean County is very lucky that we have some amazing student assistant counselors out there, and I've never seen that level of dedication to the students and what they offer. I'll go to a meeting, and I don't know how many students knock on the door within an hour period just to chat, because that's their comfort zone. That's where they go. So if you're a youth and you don't know where to go, and you're in school, find your SAC. They're the right person.
Hi, just a quick question. We had a close family member who had to go to IOP, and we supported him, we were sitting in there, well, I'm sitting in there, and I heard the lady at the counter, like, talking about $10 copay. So they didn't have it, whatever, they were gonna send them home. I figured, like, whatever it took this person to get there, whether it was court ordered, they had to take a cab, ride a bike, walk, whatever, they were gonna send them home. Now, I'm not an addict. My husband, their father was an addict. My best friend was an addict. Whatever it took for you to get there. If you were sent home, what are you gonna do? Probably get high? Because now you just got turned away. So the kids and I, we started collecting change in parking lots, wherever we find money outside the house. So we started, it was a $10 copay. So I asked the lady, I said, I didn't hear any names, nothing. Oh, here's $10. Nobody should be turned away for $10. I lost everything to drugs, not because I did drugs, but because I allowed it, you know? I kept replacing money, whatever. So they said they couldn't do it, so I threw $10. I said, oh, they must have dropped their copay on the floor, so I gave it to them. So we started a change jar, and we wanted to know how can we donate it. I know you can't just give money, but like, if somebody actually really did forget it, like, that they can like kind of borrow it from the place, so at least they don't get turned away and be, you know, discouraged and go back to drugs. Is there anything that like you can do something for that?
I think we need to give you a round of applause for that.
Yeah, we can address that after the fact. Let's talk about that.
Thank you.
I don't know that I have an answer for you right now, but we'll get one.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm please. And just one question for the person from Health Department. Lakewood has a Samaritan house that has 10 beds. And I would like for you to be in contact with me how we can keep it going, because right now I personally did a GoFundMe page because it will close soon. The success rates last year was 73% with all the intakes we had. And we do need some help to keep it going because I heard somebody said we need places to go. And it's only for men right now, but we would like to expand it to women. So if you can be in touch with me later and help us get things rolling, that
I
would
have
be
a
fine.
table out there, grab my business card. We're always excited to explore opportunities like that, to see where the gaps are in the community. And, you know, Ocean County housing and also transportation tend to be a huge gap for individuals. So definitely let's touch base.
Okay. And I have another question for you. Being told that 203 deaths in 2016 on overdose, I know Lakewood had 10. That's roughly 5%. So you mentioned about a follow-up. We're now setting up a unit to follow up on crime victims and also any homes with kids and drug addiction and everything. And I have two of the officers here with me tonight. Officer Jones is going to be working with adults, and Campbell is going to be working in the schools. So we're now setting up that unit, so anytime you can reach out to us to help us implement it, we would appreciate it. As far as RMA, we've had survivors of NAPAM refusing to go to the hospital after. Is there a law in effect, or are you working on one? Because one officer knew in his gut feeling that the victim or the patient wasn't going to survive through the night. And he lied to him and told him that he would arrest him, and that was his other choice, to go to the hospital, which was 1 block away. So I need to know if we do have any laws that after you revive with Narcan, if you have to go to the hospital. And that would be nice if we don't have one, if one can be implemented.
Yeah, I think first of all, that's a great question. I did not talk about Narcan earlier, other than to mention it, of course, but in 2016, it was 515 people that were revived with Narcan. It was deployed, actually, I should say correctly, it was deployed 515 times, which is just an incredibly high number when we talk about what's going on in our community. The goal, and that's part of what Angela does, and we're so grateful to have her on board, is that once we get the person to the hospital, we bring a recovery specialist like Angeline to talk to them, because we want, Narcan is step one. Narcan revives and Narcan knocks the opiate off of the receptors and therefore undoes the overdose at that moment in time. Depending on the amount, of course, of heroin in your system, they could reattach to the opiates. They can, and if it's fentanyl or something stronger than that, you may need more than one dose of Narcan, which is a little too much for right now. But the point of that is we need to get them to the hospital, because they can either, number one, go back into an overdose, depending on the amount of opiates in their system and the type of opiates. And if we don't get them to the hospital and they just go home, there is a chance that they will once again overdose on the same substance that they had in their system when the Narcan was used. The challenge is getting somebody who doesn't want to go from that place to the hospital. Because of the laws that are in existence, they cannot be arrested for that. So we do everything we can to convince them to get to that hospital. I will tell you, and any of you that know the prosecutor, this is not a good answer to him. And he is working on it, because it is not a good answer. It is something that we talk about every day. It's something that we talk to everybody about, because you need to get that person from that moment in time to the hospital so that people like Angela can come in and talk to them and actually then get them into treatment and talk to them about what treatment is and what it means to be in recovery, which is critically important. And if you don't connect those steps, you're missing people. So the short answer is you cannot arrest them pursuant to the law currently. Yes, we are working on it. And if you know Mr. Coronado at all, we're going to get there.
Is that fun, Yoga?
Yes.
Good evening. I'd like to thank the panel for coming out tonight, and I'd also like to thank the audience. We are the front lines against this epidemic. My name is Jason, and I'm a longtime Point Pleasant Borough resident, and I'm also a recovering addict. I currently work at the New Hope Foundation, which is an inpatient drug and alcohol facility in Marlborough, New Jersey. We cater to adolescents as well as adults. And I just want the audience to know that there is help out there. The situation is not perfect. There is a lack of beds, but there is help out there. And if anybody would like to reach out to me, I will be here after the forum is over. And also, for anybody who's suffering with family members in addiction, there's also programs like Al-Anon that you could go to. And if you have any questions about that, you could ask me, or you could just, you could Google anything nowadays. So there is help out there. If you see something, say something. Don't hesitate, because time is of the essence with this. Thank you.
I want to take the opportunity to ask another question. I think that the subject was touched a little bit by somebody who had a question. But the question is, well, first of all, let me digress for a moment. There was a question that was just asked about what laws are on the books right now that can be utilized. The legal assistant inmate has some understanding that actually there is a law that's already on the books. In New Jersey, if a person attempts to commit suicide, they can be involuntarily civil committed. There's a process for that. And I personally have not done much of the research, but off the top of my head, that is a law that's on the books that strikes me as possibly being able to be utilized. I don't know why, me, the guy who's not in the drug rehab game, for lack of a better phrase, I don't know why it's me that even thinks about that, but I think that that's a possibility. Because as far as I'm concerned, if a person overdoses, that's an attempt to kill themselves. And at that point, the involuntary civil commitment laws should kick in, and whether that person wants to go to the hospital or not, they can be taken in custody under the involuntary civil commitment laws, and I think that they should be. I don't know why it hasn't been, and I don't know if any of you can speak to that.
I can certainly speak to that. The way that the involuntary civil commitment law is written, it could not be used in that particular circumstance. But what you've said are things that we've talked about, in that there is a community policing function and responsibility. And community policing involves public safety and the safety of oneself. And there are times that you are, and it's very difficult to answer some of these questions in the general versus the specific, but there certainly are times that I would advise a police officer that the public safety requires that that person be transported to the hospital. The question was, can they be arrested? They cannot be arrested at that moment in time under the current law. But there are things, depending on the circumstances, that you can do. It would not be the civil commitment because that requires doctors, and you just wouldn't have that on the scene when you're deploying Narcan. It wouldn't happen at that point in time. But those are the things and the discussions that we've had. Is there an opportunity for us to use the community policing function, the danger to oneself function that does exist in the law? But it can be more complicated than that, I think, specifically on the street at the time of the deployment of Narcan. So we're trying to develop something that's going to work, that we know will work, that we can use and roll out throughout our community. Like I said, I know that you know Mr. Coronado, and those of you that do, this is not a, hey, let's just forget about it. This is a constant discussion in our office as to how this part of it becomes perfected, so that we don't miss the opportunity to get somebody who has obviously harmed themselves, whether it was a voluntary overdose, so to speak, or an attempt, as you mentioned, or just they took too much at that moment in time accidentally. Regardless of that, the bottom line is they've overdosed and they needed to be saved with Narcan. We need to get that fixed. There's no question.
Before any law is passed, they are doing everything that they can to get these victims to the emergency room. I mean, they are really pulling rabbits out of a hat to get them there, and they're doing a great job of that. So, you know, in the meantime, we are looking good on that aspect.
You know, normally I would accept that at face value, normally, because I wholeheartedly believe in the job that the EMTs do. It's a tremendous thing. But it just so happened that just recently, I'm from Tom's River, and this happened in Tom's River. I was on location just as someone was revived from Narcan, and the gentleman was sitting down. He had the oxygen still on his mask, and there was two MTs and a Tom's police officer. And they began that conversation about, all right, you know, do you want to go to the hospital? You know, we'll get you in the rig, we'll get you some help. And the guy didn't want to. And the immediate response was, well, okay, I need you to sign right here. I was standing in the hallway. I was not involved in this. I just happened to know the resident whose apartment that was. And it was mind-bending to me to watch that. I'm not a recovery coach. I'm not in a rehab game. I'm so disassociated from that, other than being a concerned citizen, that you had two MTs, a police officer, and the person that was revived, and the person whose apartment was. And nobody said anything, but other than, okay. And here I am standing in the hallway door, and I said, hey, listen, maybe you might want to do that. But I'm so far removed, that wasn't my place. But it was frustrating for me, and that's what makes me wonder what's going on. I don't doubt that there are EMTs that genuinely care and might try to make the extra effort. I don't doubt there are some police officers who genuinely care and might make the extra effort. But that's not the reality that happens in every single instance. And the general public needs to know and understand that. There are good intentions, but that does not mean that it's always happening. And I think that by and large, a lot of people are falling through those cracks. I don't know if there's anything from the prosecutor's office that can dictate how the EMTs and the officers on the scene in Ocean County are to respond to those instances.
I think you need to rewind a little bit and listen to what Angela said earlier. She said how she did when her parents tried to keep her in, and you know, she was saying like force her to have help. At the end of the day, an addict is an addict. It's a disease, but that addict has to want the help to change. A Narcan can help revive them, but that's not going to help them a year down the road, or the next day. They have to want the help. So I don't think it's really fair to throw it at the police and say, you know, force them into treatment, because what if they really don't want the treatment and the girl next door does really want the treatment and can't have it? So I think it's kind of to look at it in both ways. I mean, I agree with you, but I also think, because at the end of the day, when I look to talk about my brother, it was his choice. You know, the police could have been like, oh, you know, you got to kind of weigh on both sides, but I don't think it's fair just to pin it on them.
Not necessarily, I agree with you. I try to be objective about, you know, how I think that law enforcement had a role in this. But I do know that, for example, in Howell Township, just outside of Ocean County, Monmouth, that they have a program where the police and the EMTs are dispatched to a location. Simultaneously, there's a recovery coach that's also dispatched to
Well, I think that moving forward, I think that, I know as a recovery specialist, it is heartbreaking for me sometimes to see the things that I see, and know that we cannot save everyone. And I don't take credit for the people that do well, because then I'd have to take credit for all the people that don't do well, you know? But what I can say is that as a citizen and as a recovery specialist in this community, as long as I'm doing the best job every single day that I can to make an impact on this epidemic, then I've done a good job. And if everyone in the community does what they have to do every single day to the best of their ability, we have a chance, you know?
I'd just like to thank you for having us here in our community. I just wanted to add to a few things that you have mentioned today. I'm a nurse of 20 years, and I work on the pediatric floor at Jersey Shore Medical Center. I also have 4 children, and 2 of them, my oldest children, are recovering addicts. And I've seen the progression right in front of my eyes of what happens when somebody gets into something that they have no control of. Through the articles I've read and the research that I've done, and it's just a nurse research, National Institute for Health, and there's another woman called Nora Volkov. She has articles that she does research on, is that teenagers are susceptible to drinking and drugs because their limbic system isn't developed, and that if there can be a delay, that's why the drinking age is 21. Maybe it should be 22 because some kids' brains aren't developed until they're 23 or 24. But the less exposure kids have to drugs and alcohol, it decreases the chance of them having drug issues. I would like to say that in the last 3 months, I've seen a lot of kids come in with overdoses and have to go into PICU and recover and then come to my floor. I've seen parents say, well, they're going to miss their baseball game, or well, they're going to miss their chances for college. And I have to tell them, because I know that they could die. If you don't get them into treatment, they could die. And I felt so much pressure when I was a parent, but I had no shame at all telling my family, look, if they come to you at any point asking you for things, don't give it to them, come call me and I'll tell you where we're at in their recovery, because all you can do is provide them love and food, and that's it. That's it. And then anything else, if you have a question, you can come to me, or I invited my family to go to Al-Anon. There is meetings for parents. It's called Parent Al-Anon, and they have meetings in this area on Monday nights and Saturday. And then there's what I say when I have children and young adults in the hospital, that they're going to be sent to a recovery place for addiction. I say, look, there is a group of kids waiting for you to recover and be well. And there's a Neptune Young People's Meeting, and they meet on, let's see here, Saturday at 8, and that's at the Hamilton United Methodist Church, and they want the youth of that group wants kids to come in, and they want to protect you. They want you to know, here we are, we're a part of your family. We are going to help you because we've been there. So I just wanted to say those 2 things. As a nurse, I still have kids come in. I have kids in recovery, and I want to say that it has been hell until I went into Al-Anon for parents, and it's available. And I'm proud of my daughters today because they're back in college and they have 4 and 2 years in recovery. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Pat Susie. I'm Beth's mom, and I lost my son 3 years ago. And one of the most important things I learned, and I think I'm going back to more of awareness with your children. I did not know this in my family until I got a call that day about my son in rehab. and they asked me if there was any addiction in my family, and I said, no, I don't know of anyone. And when I got off the phone, well, before I got off the phone, they did ask me, they said, please check. There is somebody in your family or your husband's family that has some kind of addiction. It could be anything. It could be an eating disorder, alcohol, drugs, shopping, any kind of addiction. But they said, check, look, see what you can find. So I hung up the phone and I was talking to my brother, and sure enough, my mother's 2 sisters died of alcoholism. My husband's relatives also had alcohol and drug addiction problems. We never knew that, and we found out that addiction is hereditary. It is a gene that you carry. Excuse me, they can't test for it yet. They are working on it, and supposedly they're very close to finding it. But sometimes I think maybe if I knew that back then when my kids were younger, I could have told them that when you're out partying, because every kid's going to party, and if you think your child's not going to party, you're living in a make-believe world, because it happens. That's part of growing up. And I keep thinking, well, maybe if I knew this and I educated them, maybe it could have helped, maybe it couldn't have, but it might have. But when we speak with the experts, they all tell us that if you have addiction in your family, one of the most important things you can do for your child is to tell them. Don't keep it a secret, don't keep it in the closet because you're embarrassed, because it's nothing to be embarrassed about. And if there's any parent out there right now that has a child who is an addict, my advice to you would be to hold your head up very high and walk around and be very proud of your child, because they didn't want to be an addict. Unfortunately, they caught that disease, just like catching cancer or anything else. So if that can help anybody in this audience or anyone you know who knows of somebody who is an addict, tell them to be proud of that person. Don't be ashamed of that person, and don't hide it. Because I have to tell you, the one thing we did do when we found out about our son is we never hid it. We held our heads up high, we worked with him, and we let him know that we were very proud of him because he was trying so hard to fight that battle. He couldn't fight it, but I know there's a lot of people out there that can fight it and can win it, just like Angela. So I hope that anybody who knows of anyone, any loved one that is an addict, help them, stand up with them, hold your head up high, and speak highly of them. Don't belittle them, because it's a sickness. It really is. And they need help. They're reaching out for help, and a lot of them don't know how to reach out for help, and a lot of family members don't know how to help them. So the most important thing, too, is to educate yourself and to know this is happening. I was born and raised in Point Pleasant, and it's a great town. It's a great community. And it's happening in our community. I mean, it happened to my family. It can happen to anybody. So, like I said, just help each other, make awareness. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Davies. I grew up in Point Pleasant Beach, and I have 2 boys that are seniors at this high school. I also work at a substance abuse place, and it's called Advanced Health and Education, and it's here in Eatontown. I do want to let some people know, because I'm feeling like I'm just getting people are asking for some questions and some help, and I would like everybody to know, if you do have a family member or someone that you love that is dealing with addiction, alcoholism, or drug addiction, at Advanced Help or in Eatontown, right off Industrial Way, we have at 7 p.m. on Thursday nights a free, anyone is welcome, family session. It's kind of like an Al-Anon, like what the woman spoke about. It's like an Al-Anon, but it's 7 o'clock, 7 to 8 o'clock. One of our lead counselors at our program runs it. It's very helpful. I've been in it, and again, it's free. You can just come in from 7 to 8 and ask questions. it's, some people, I know some people get a little crazy and don't want to go to meetings and show up, and, because of the stigma, which is sad, but, so if anyone is interested, though, I just wanted to get out that. And also I wanted to share something about, because you shared something about the heroin, how do people go to heroin, and, for what I know is, so when everyone did a great job tonight, and I'm so glad I came, but, from what I know, is that when kids or adults start taking pain medication, no matter what it is, fun at a party, someone has a pill, an injury and the doctor prescribed you a surgery and your first shot of Demerol, and they do get addicted. The heroin, like the prosecutor was saying, the opiates, Percocets, Vicodin, OxyContin, Oxysets, they're heroin. It's the same ingredient. So now when you're addicted to a pain medication and the doctor eventually will cut you off from it, you're now going through withdrawal and you need that. So to buy them on the streets, one pill can be anywhere from $30 to $80 for one pill. And then you're talking about an equivalent of a bag of heroin for $5 or $10. And again, that's, and I just, that's the whole, where the heroin really has, it's cheap. It's cheap, and like they were saying, it's available. It's available everywhere. In our town, I really, it's not in the dark alleys, everybody, everything everyone said here, it's so true. It's everywhere. So, when you struggling, you're a kid, you're in college, you're a parent, you have children, you have to, pay bills, $30 to $80 for one pill is pretty expensive. And you need to take those pills, not just one per day, a bunch per day, throughout, just going over to heroin is the cheaper solution. But anyway, I just wanted to share that. Like 7 o'clock Thursday night, Advanced Health and Education in Eatontown. Seriously, it's free. It's open to anybody. If anyone's interested in, let me know. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Duke Jordan. I'm a former employee. Mr. Smith was my boss until June 30th. How are you, Mr. Smith? I'm actually asking a question to my son, the attorney, who left to pick up his child. It's about immunity. I'm going to try to do the best I can because it's late, and I'm thinking, no, I'm not answering out the question. I'm all you folks. Young 20-year-olds at a party, one guy goes down, been using heroin. Then we better call the police. We better get somebody here to help. Well, if I call the police, are we all going to get busted? He mentioned something about an immunity law. And I just think maybe if you could explain that, that would be really helpful so people know that they could get folks help. Because we had incidents, friends of ours who were afraid to do that, drove a person to the hospital themselves, and the guy was dead in a parking lot because they were afraid to call the police.
Yep.
Thank you.
Well, first I just want to say there are too many stories that end with we left the person there to die, quite honestly. There are too many of those stories. And my good friend Michael, who's here, tells it the best, quite honestly. And there are just too many stories that ended with, we left the person there because we knew it was an overdose and we took off because we didn't want to get caught, we didn't want to get charged, we didn't want to get arrested, and it ends in death because nobody calls. Narcan needs to be deployed quickly, by the way. This isn't hey, 3 hours later, let's deploy Narcan and it's going to work. These are quick. We need police response. We need EMT response. I hate to say this, but I'm a lawyer, so I'm going to start with this. But everything depends on the facts and circumstances, right? Everything depends on specific facts of the case. So there are times where people can be charged, but generally speaking, there is an immunity if you call for help for the possessory offenses that surround the reason for the help. So if you're calling 911 and you call the police and you're trying to get help there will not be a charge for the drugs and the paraphernalia possessory stuff that's found there. I want to be clear, though, that if somebody is there who turns out to be the person who has distributed 300 bricks of heroin in the community, they don't get away with that, and they don't get to basically walk despite that fact. So I hate to give the answer, it depends, but the general answer is there is an immunity on the call for help for possessing drugs, because we want people to call for help. We want the police response. We want the EMT to be there. Because that's important. That's important to get that involvement, and you can't do that if you don't trust what's going to happen when the lieutenant shows up. But there is, of course, some things that can be charged, and those are the more serious offenses that may correspond with regular possessory offenses.
I think we're going to take one more question. I think I saw somebody here.
This is for the teacher who is looking for resources for the kids. There's a program called Second Floor. You can call in, you can go online, and you can speak there. It's for kids ages 7 to 18, and it's anonymous. They just get to speak to someone about anything. So that would be a really good resource for those kids that you're not so sure about. As for the EMTs, that's what enraged me to get up here. I am an EMT for 20 years. My daughter was taken to the hospital, CPR in progress, and I got the phone call from friends. And the thought that they didn't feel the need to take someone to the hospital is upsetting to me, because as an EMT, you do have to take them. It's a mental health component, and right there is the reason enough to take someone, whether they've been Narcan, if you know they're using or not. You need to get them that help. And I apologize as an EMT. I apologize that you witnessed 2 people do that. And you can always report them because it's unacceptable. And I thank you for doing this. It's important because when my daughter overdosed years ago, there wasn't programs like this. There wasn't people out talking. And I was ashamed, and at work I was shunned. And it's important. These parents need to know that they're not alone. The brothers and sisters, they need to know they're not alone. And the parents that lose their kids, my heart goes out to you. Because thankfully, 8 rehabs later all over the country, I've been financially broke doing this for my daughter. But it can be done. And love and support is important. So thank you. Thank you all.
I think that's going to conclude our program tonight, but I just want to, before I close, I'd just like to give a thanks over here. I forgot earlier to our sign language interpreters, and I've been watching them, and they've really been working out. Thank you for volunteering your services tonight. We really appreciate it, so thank you very much. Great job, ladies. I think in closing, and let me go back. I want to thank this panel tonight for their expertise, for Beth and Angela to share their personal stories, and our law enforcement component, Mr. Foley, from a school district perspective. I thank you all for being here tonight and sharing and providing information to this group. And I really want to thank the audience tonight for some great questions, because I think from the last many stories here tonight, people opened up and shared their personal stories with really an audience of strangers to most of them. And I think that's pretty heroic, and I thank you for giving that message out to everybody. I think, I was jotting some things down here, and I think one of the common themes of this whole evening came down, I think, to community, being a community and working together to help solve this problem. That's one of the things I took out of this, to help each other, to help your loved ones, and because we found out this epidemic doesn't discriminate. We've heard it many times. It doesn't matter how rich or how poor, what skin color you are, where demographics, doesn't matter. And I think it was also said that, it doesn't only affect the person, the victim, it affects the families and many people beyond that. I think this guy runs a tough house, I can tell you that. But I think he's right. I think as parents, the parents out there, question your kids. We've all been in those situations, and I know it's difficult. Sometimes you want to think they're your friends, but they really are kids, and you love them. But I think you got to be strong for them. So I think that came out of this tonight. For our students out in the audience tonight, I think you've really heard some riveting stories that they're not make believe. They're They're not on some television show that you're watching or some video game or whatever. They're real life stories. I've heard about people who lost loved ones. So make those right choices. And we got some, and we opened this up to our students from 6 through 12, and because we know they know the difference between right and wrong. And you young people out there are going to have choices, tough choices to make your entire life. And as you move through school here and then move on to the college or the workplace, you're going to be confronted with tough choices. And so use the guidance that you learn in school from your teachers, your parents, and I think you'll go a long way. And I think the other thing is, just to close, that there are a lot of resources out there. We've had a lot of people step up tonight and tell us that. You've heard Kim, and I've met some of our people who are set up out in the foyer tonight with their program, so I encourage you to take advantage of it. It might not be easy to get into places, and and I'm not the expert on that area, but I think if you have people and you need to ask questions, there's a lot of resources out there, and to open it up to everybody and keep pushing to get those beds and everything. And the best thing is too, you elect politicians every year. And that's what they do. That's what their jobs are supposed to be, is to change the laws and rewrite the laws and investigate. So, and I think, we sometimes don't do enough of that, but that's what they're elected to do. You as the people elect them for that. So I want to once again thank you. You've been a great group, and like I said, this has been a great audience tonight, and I thank you all for coming. Thank you very much.